Okay, next up I want to do a Hydrostone casting. Hydrostone is a USG product. It's like plaster. They make a lot of different types of plaster products. I really like using Hydrostone. It produces a phenomenal surface quality. In fact, they use it in figurines, stuff that they need to have a really smooth surface, and it's really hard. It will break if you drop it on on a floor, but it's a phenomenal product. I tested a lot of products for some different design work that I did, and I really liked using the Hydrostone. So that's what we're going to use today. You should have that in your kit. Usually it's anywhere between about 25 to 30% by weight that you would add with water. So you'd weigh your Hydrostone, and then you would add approximately 27% of that weight in water to the Hydrostone. So it's interesting, when you add water to it, the tendency is you want to stir it up right away, mix it. But the directions, and I'm really bad at this too. I'm not very patient. But you really want to just put the water in and let it sit for just a short time. I'm going to actually stir it just because I want to speed up the process so we're not taking a lot of time with the video. But normally you would put the correct amount of water, again about 27% by weight, with the Hydrostone, and you just let it sit for 2 or 3 minutes. This stuff does set very quickly, so you have probably between maybe 7, 8, 10 minutes max to mix this and actually pour it. And I should say, depending on your room temperature and everything else, it could actually be less than that. You might only have 4 or 5 minutes. So, but when you add water, you can usually let it sit in there for 4 or 5 minutes because you're not stirring it. That tends to activate it too a little bit faster. And then you have another 4 or 5 minutes to cast it. So 10 minutes on the outside, but depending on room temperature, it might be 5, 6, 7 minutes. You don't want to use warm water. You want to use cool water. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to pour a little bit in here, and I am going to stir it just because I kind of want to speed up the process. You can kind of see there it's bubbling a little bit. You want to make sure that you really get down into the bottom, especially if you're going to stir it. Now you can see that it's pretty much absorbed a lot of the water. The amazing thing about this product, it will keep absorbing water. You think, oh, I don't have enough water, and then you pour more water in it, and then suddenly you've got too much water. So you have to be really careful. Definitely want to do it by weight. I'm not doing it in this case. I just had some here. I'm just mixing, but I've mixed it a lot. I have a pretty good feel generally for how much water it needs to take. So yeah, so it's doing pretty good. I like to have it, like runny pancake batter. I don't want it too runny. So I'm going to be able to add just a little bit more water to this. I've still got a little bit of dry powder down here in the bottom that I can see. I'm going to add just a little bit more in there. I want to be really careful. Add really small amounts, because once it reaches its saturation point, it's really quick. Suddenly then you've got too much water, and then you actually have to add more Hydrostone. But in your case, you guys have just a couple kits. So you've got, maybe 2 shots at this. I'm going to let that sit for just a second, do a little bit more absorption. I have a little bit of time still. So this was a design. Logan's been helping me with doing some of the testing here too, so I want to give Logan some credit here. So he actually did some of these designs here just for testing purposes. I wanted to try black silicone. I thought, well, maybe it might be nice to have some color. It might give more definition so you can kind of see what's going on. They've got it in almond white, black. We tried the black in the silicone, and we actually couldn't get it to cure. So whatever they're using for a color additive, it did not work. In fact, after I think almost a week, it was still really, really sticky. So we just decided to stay with what worked for us, which was this 100% clear. You'll notice that this is kind of nice and flat around the rim. So this was what came out of it, but we also did it in black. That's why you see all these black markings. It stuck to it and didn't want to come off. So, and then we actually took a casting off of it, a second casting with the clear after we had used the black. So that's why you see some black in here. But for this purpose here of demonstrating using the Hydrostone, I think it's going to work just fine. So yeah, so we removed that. We have a nice rim around the edge there. I'm going to set it down here. This is looking pretty good. It's about pancake batter consistency. I stir it just a little bit. You don't want to stir it real hard. You don't want a lot of air bubbles in it. Okay, so now I'm going to pour it in here. It's kind of critical. These molds are really small, but you want to pour in one location and let it flow out. If I start to pour it and swirl it around, what happens is as the mix comes together on the base, you start to get air pockets in it. So you really don't want to do that. You want to be really, really careful with that. So when you start to pour, just pour it in one spot and let it flow out from the one spot. You can even start it in a corner. It kind of depends on the shape that you have, where you want to pour from. But just let it flow out through the base of it. And here's the other thing too, you don't need to pour it all the way to the top. If you pour it all the way to the top, which you might need to do for the weight, but if you've come over a little bit, pour it up to where your design ends on the edge. Because if the Hydrostone flows out, what you're going to end up doing is just trying to sand it all back. So just kind of pour up to the edge of that. Now here, you want to get the air bubbles out of it. Normally I would put these on maybe a vibration table or something where it creates a lot of vibration and actually pushes the bubbles to the surface. But a couple things you can do here is you can tap, you can take the mold, shake it, just keep tapping it down. Even taking a surface like this and just going around it and tapping. Whatever you can do, just to kind of tap it for just a minute or two. What's going to happen, you're going to see the air bubbles rise to the surface. It's going to ensure that the Hydrostone gets into all the nooks and cracks inside your, if you've got an intricate design. Really like working with Hydrostone. It's super smooth. So there we have it. You're going to let that set up for, let it set up for probably an hour. You can actually demold it sometimes as soon as 20-30 minutes, but really, again, be patient. Just wait an hour, even longer if you want, but an hour probably will do it. And then you can come back, peel it apart, pull the casting out. So the Hydrostone, my objective with the Hydrostone is I wanted to have you get the feel for how it actually works and feels. You can pull that out. You can go back to your wet sanding material. If you see imperfections with the Hydrostone, you can actually sand them out. If you've got divots in the Hydrostone, you can actually mix just a little bit of this material if you hold some out, and you can actually patch it up and do repair work. So what you can do after you get your master mold, you can come back, sand, patch, continue to work with it, and actually create a really nice surface quality of the Hydrostone. So when you do your second silicone casting off your Hydrostone, you want to try to create, a really nice clean mold that we're then going to use to pour our glycerin base, soap base into, and actually create your final soap bar. So there we have it. So really pretty simple with the Hydrostone. I've got a little extra material in here, so if you have something else, maybe you've got a second casting, you might be able to pour in it, play with it a little bit. Pretty cool stuff. I really like this material.